Well, livestock production is a cornerstone of American agriculture. During the Global Climate Summit earlier this month, world leaders recommended reducing meat consumption to help mitigate environmental impacts. But the research paints a more complicated story. Greg Ibach from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln joins us now for more on this. Thank you so much for being here. So clearly, the U.S. has the most efficient livestock production system in the world. First of all, address that.
Well, you're exactly right. Especially in the beef industry, we have less than 9% of the world's cattle here in the U.S., but we produce almost 22% of the world's beef that is produced. So obviously that's an efficient system. We also, since the 60s and 70s, we have 15% fewer cattle, but produce 20% more beef. And at that same period of time, we have, as we've nearly doubled our beef production, we've also, since the 60s, we've also reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 11%. So those are numbers that I don't think many countries around the world can compete with, and it's something that makes us more efficient. And it's dangerous when world organizations try to compare apples and oranges with regard to agricultural production.
Absolutely well said. I have to ask you, since you talked about reduction in gas emissions, University of Nebraska, long been a leader in beef research. Is the university right now engaged in efforts to further reduce the environmental impacts of livestock?
You bet we are. We are, first of all, trying to measure and quantify and use science, sound science, to actually have a benchmark for what is actually happening as far as emissions, and looking at the entire scope of the emissions from birth to going out the loading dock where the beef is loaded out the back of the packing plant. But we're also interested in looking at how genetics, feed additives, different diets, the microbiome inside the cow's rumen, how those all might make a difference as well.
I'd like you, Mr. Ibach, to speak to knowing that some land really better suited to livestock production. I know you've covered that there.
Well, that's correct. You know, a lot of people think that, oh, well, we can take the cattle off and we'll raise vegetables or other forms of protein. But because of soil, because of water availability, that just isn't the case. In fact, 70% of the world's land is only suitable for ruminant production.
Well said. Thank you so much for breaking it down and for all the research you do. Appreciate you joining us today. I know you're busy there, so thank you so much for making the time. Greg Ibach with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Again, thank you.